What's up, y'all? Goofy Rexy here, and hope everybody is doing well. And wanted to make a video today, guys, and talk about Dark Dimension 5, right? So since we found out, ever since we found out that we're going to need these legendary horseman teams, we're going to need to gear them up pretty high in order to be able to get through the eventual sagas, and of course, eventually be able to get Apocalypse. A lot of us has been thinking, okay, well, what's the best strategy that we can use here? What are the best characters that we can use to get through Dark Dimension 5, right? So gonna be going through that list here today, kind of breaking down what I recommend as some city options, global options, cosmic options, and of course legendary options here for Dark Dimension 5. And a lot of the stuff as well you can use towards your planning when it comes to Dark Dimension 4 and potentially even Dark Dimension 3 as well. So we're actually gonna dive directly into it here. Now, I am pretty terrible with graphics, so what I did here is I actually just put everything into a Word doc, and I'm going to most likely continue to update this here because I do believe that things will change. There will be some new characters that will come out, which is actually one of the things that I want to talk about here. Before I even dive into it, I feel like this is really important to mention, right? So these are only recommendations. So ultimately, you decide what is best for your roster, right? Depending on stars, red stars, what you get. Some of these characters, maybe you don't have them, right? So maybe you kind of have to go with some alternative options here. So this is, like I said, this is just recommendations as to what you could do. Nothing is set in stone. Thoughts may change based on new character releases, there could be new game modes. It all ultimately depends at the end of the day. Sorry for the noise in the background here. It all depends on what happens at the end of the day. There might be some things that will change. So, hey, we'll continue to kind of try to keep this list updated, and then I'll make some recommendations based on that. And then this one I think is really important to mention here. It's not about speed anymore with getting through Dark Dimension. It is about the best use of your resources here, right? So some of the characters, some of the comps that I'm going to talk about here may not necessarily be the best comps per se, but or some of like our character recommendations may not be the best, but they are what makes the most sense because you're going to have to build this way moving forward anyway. So the first thing I wanted to dive into are the city and talk about the recommended options there, right? So for city, we're going to be looking at Ghost Spider, Spider-Man, Scarlet Spider, Shang-Chi, and I think Squirrel Girl here. Now, I'm a little iffy on Squirrel Girl. I think she's an amazing character, but one of the things that I wrote down here to consider is that this is ultimately going to be a lot of bio gear, right? But let's talk about the reason why I even chose the Web Warriors. When you're looking at your city roster, there's just not really a lot of options that are available that are not Web Warriors, right? Like there's just very limited options. So if we kind of even like jump back into the roster here and pull up our city list, I mean, there's Nico, right? But we're not going to want to do that. There's the symbiotes, there's Cloak and Dagger, which we're going to talk about here. There's Ghost Rider. There's just not really a ton of options that make sense. So I chose Web Warriors because you're going to be using them in raid content anyways. So it kind of makes sense to sort of invest into them. Same thing. The reason why I have Shang-Chi here, because he's also a raid character for your skill raids. So I think, and also he's a skill character, which is going to be important to kind of watch how much of an origin trait you're kind of using for your Dark Dimension run as well. So that's the reason why Shang-Chi's there. Squirrel Girl is pretty amazing as a character, but she is bio gear, but she's really kind of the best fifth that's there because we don't want to use Cloak and Dagger because they're bio gear. So they're mystic gear. So we'll talk about the reason why a little bit later as we kind of go through this here. So that's the reason kind of why I have them there. Squirrel Girl is needed for your Scourge, your Famine Scourge event, so you can get some added benefit there. Now for secondary options, I wrote them down here. You got Miles, another Web Warrior. You have Cloak as a new Warriors character I mentioned here. She-Hulk, she's 90. She's there. Dagger, Spider-Punk, these are characters that are there as well. Now, I would say things to consider with this is that She-Hulk is a part of the legendary team. So therefore, it would make sense to probably invest into her. The issue that I have is that she's 90 mini uniques. That's what these numbers are here. The numbers right next to the characters are mini uniques. She's just very expensive. So I don't know if you're going to want to do that on the first run because most likely it's going to be a battle for gear. So She-Hulk is probably a character to hold off on. So that's the reason why I put her as a secondary option. Cloak and Dagger I put as secondary options as well, because they may be out of the meta entirely, right? When you're looking at Darkhold, you're looking at Stormhold now being used for your Doom raids. It's just, they're just kind of falling out of the meta right now where that is concerned. And with you having this need to build these legendary horseman teams, I just think that Cloak and Dagger probably are just at best secondary options and potentially may just be out of the running, period. If we're looking at that, they're also mystic characters too, so they take up a lot of mystic gear, and mystic gear is going to be kind of scarce while kind of having to build up your legendary horseman team. So therefore, that's the reason why I kind of put them as secondary options and may even be out of the list entirely. All right, for global, let's look at the global characters that are available here. So my recommended options here are Agatha. So Agatha, I think, she's a good character. She's a legendary horseman team character too, right? Being a part of the Darkhold team. I think she's pretty good to use, even as being able to get some good skills for her. She has some healing, she has a stun, she can ping with her basic depending on where enemies characters health are. So I think that's pretty good. Captain Sam is a raid character, and although he's not a part of a legendary horseman team, because there's a lot of options in global that you can select here, and we'll talk about them as some of secondary options, but I think Captain Sam is worth G16, and the reason why is just because of his utility. I think you're going to get a lot of solid usage out of him. With his ultimate, he can speed up your team. With his special, he can grant ability energy. There's a lot of things that Captain Sam can do here. He has a short cooldown with his special. He can taunt, he can take on some hits. So I just said that there's going to be a lot of utility value that you can get out of Captain Sam. So I definitely think that he's a character that's still worth being on this list. I put Braun here. I like Braun a lot. Probably mainly for his ultimate ability here. So one of his skills steals 35% health. So if you look at this right here, Showboat, attack the primary target for 150% damage and then steal 35% health. I mean, come on now, that's a lot of damage right there. That could be quite useful in Dark Dimension, especially considering that a lot of these characters in Dark Dimension usually have these large health pools. Yeah, I'm definitely going to want to take advantage of that. He's also part of a legendary horseman team and the Gamma team. So another reason here as well why I would definitely recommend using him. I have Gambit here too. He's another part of a legendary horseman team, the Unlimited X-Men team. He's pretty cheap as well from a mini unique perspective. And I think that you could get some decent usage out of him here. This is not going to be a team that's going to just blast through everything, right? This is going to take some time to be able to get through it. But Gambit, I think I like the value here for him, being able to give you some out of turn pings. He has an ability block on whenever with his special ability. He gets an ability block on turn 1 there. So you can get some value out of him there as well. And then Sharon Carter, I still put her here, even though she's a raid character. You can also get some solid utility out of her too with her special can ability block. Her ultimate can clear positive effects and also stun. She can apply slow. She can apply defense down. That will definitely, I think, be helpful for some of these nodes. She's a skill character too, right? So we're not going to go really heavy on skill so far. I think there's only going to be 4 skill characters here in total. So from an origin gate perspective, not too exhausting on your resources. So I think Sharon Carter definitely makes sense here as well. Now, things to consider, Abomination and Hulk are gonna benefit from Braun, right? So with the health steal, Braun with his ultimate, he only gives the health, redistributes it to Gamma allies and himself. So being able to take advantage of that could be nice by bringing in Hulk and then also bringing in Abomination. The only thing though is that it's going to be pretty tough on your bio gear because I'm recommending Squirrel Girl and the other 3 Web Warriors. So that may be a little tough on your bio gear, but maybe you're like, hey, maybe I want to go with some other characters for City. The problem is with Cities that you're also going to be jumping into Mystic gear a lot. So that's the reason why I'm like, you know what, for global, let's go with these characters up here. And then for your secondary run, hopefully you can get some gear for Abomination and Hulk, and that would make sense for you moving forward there, because ideally you're going to kind of need to go through Dark Dimension, get the gear to be able to then put the gear secondary on some of your secondary characters. And also I wrote down here too, your bio constraints are high, but it's only going to really constrain you or strain you when it comes to your city and then also your global section. After that, you're not really using any other bio characters throughout the rest of Dark Dimension. So really, you're going to feel the bio constraint for global and for city. Apart from that, you're kind of going to be in a good place here. Secondary options, I wrote them all down here. Emma, Doom, Maria Hill, Wong. Wong's a part of the Legendary Horseman team. Dazzler's a part of the Legendary Horseman team. Vision, I wrote down here. Deathlock, Vision, Hulkbuster, Sunfire. These are all secondary options that you can use. Things to consider: Dazzler and Sunfire are part of a legendary team. The benefit will be there, but the speed of getting through Dark Dimension definitely may be very slow. If you choose to use Dazzler and Sunfire and swap out like Sharon and Captain Sam, right? If you're kind of going for a full legendary team, Legendary Horseman team characters, that may be a little strenuous. For Vision is a good character. Gonna be needed for your Doom raids. Problem is that he's gamma radiation, so that's gonna be pretty strenuous as well. So that's also something to consider. Doom, I think, is also another character too, where I'm just kind of not sure where he's gonna stand in the meta right now because of the Bionic Avenger team that's gonna be taking over for these Doom tech raids. Just not quite sure exactly where he's gonna stand at the end of it all. So I'm not quite sure if after Dark Dimension 4 you're gonna want to invest into Doom anymore. You're kind of gonna have to make that decision. I still think he's a good character. It's just gear constraints, right? That's really kind of what it comes down to. Emma is a cool character I put here, but mutant, so might not be the best mutant investment at this point, because there is a concern that we're probably going to be getting Archangel, and that's probably going to put some more strain on your mutant gear. You're going to want to build Rogue for Dark Dimension Legendary, so therefore that's probably going to be a little too heavy on your mutant gear. She's 72 pieces for mini unique, so that's also going to be an expensive character to bring in, right? So that's pretty much it. Now for Cosmic, very different than Global. Very slim pickings for Cosmic, right? So if you're looking at your Cosmic options here, my recommendations are really simple. It's Cersei, Icarus, so your Eternals, Kestrel here, which has split mini uniques between tech and then also skill. She has a higher cost on skill. I think skill is 36, and the rest is all for tech. Doctor Strange, Heartless, and then yes, I put Valkyrie here, and I'll talk about the reason why. So the thing about the Cosmic section, we can kind of pan over to the roster here. There's just not really a lot of availability for other characters, man. I just don't know really where you're gonna pick from. Where's Cosmic non-legendary, right? Like there's just not really a lot of options that are here, right? Like you don't want to go with Bishop, that's mutant. He's also probably on his way out as being a part of the meta, depending on what happens with the next legendary team. America Chavez, no. Phyla-Vell, like she's okay, but you know, that's more bio gear. That's also astral energy that Icarus takes. Magic, I wouldn't recommend doing Magic. I just did that because I just needed to have a little bit of fun, and I really like Magic as a character. Silver Surfer is Mystic. Deathpool is Mystic, right? There's just very slim options available for you to bring into Cosmic. So I went with Valkyrie. She's a part of the Legendary Horseman. I still got to build up my Hero as Guardians. Don't judge me. I'm a slow leveler when it comes to my roster. I do like 2 to 4 levels a day, and I'm working on my Bionic Avengers right now, so leave me alone. But yeah, I mean, there's just not really a lot of options that are there. But Valkyrie is a cheap enough option. Well, she's actually 54 mini uniques, but she's a skill option, right? And so far, our only skill characters that we recommended so far are Shang-Chi, Sharon Carter, Captain Sam, Kestrel, right? And then now you have Valkyrie. So it may be a little heavy on your skill gear because it's 5 characters, but it's either that or you go bio or mystic, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll rather just go with another skill character. She's gonna be a character that you're gonna use in Scourge. So it's like the best of what's left. Was basically where I went with Valkyrie. You could technically also go with like Thor or Mighty Thor, but being that you're using Agatha. Actually, when I think of Agatha, you're using Cersei, and you're using Icarus and Doctor Strange Heartless, right? So if you go at Thor, Mighty Thor, what's that going to end up? And then of course Morgan later, it's going to end up being 6 Mystic characters. It's just going to be way too heavy with that. So therefore, I think I would just recommend going with Valkyrie just because she's skill. You could say, well, what about T'Challa and Stitcher? Like, what about those characters? Like, those are some of your secondary options that are there. But Stitcher, while he is cheap because he's only 18 mini uniques, he does take gamma radiation, and that's something that you're going to want to use on Hulk and want to use on She-Hulk later. You're right. So an Abomination later on. So yeah, while he may be cheap, he also takes some of those hero uniques that you really want. T'Challa is probably okay for tech. I don't think he really eats away at anything that you probably really need later on. So maybe if you don't want to use Valkyrie, maybe you go with T'Challa. Just that T'Challa is probably not going to be used anywhere else. He's being used right now for Tech Doom raids, but once BA gets built up, you're kind of going to go away from that. And then last but certainly not least here is Legendary. This one is very, very straightforward, right? Recommended options, I think, would be the Horseman and the Apocalypse. But of course, I understand that maybe some people don't want to be that patient when it comes to doing that right now. So what are like your realistic options at the current moment, right? So I think right now you're definitely go with Morgan, definitely go with Rogue. Those are your two top tier options. If you can wait for Red Hulk, that's cool too. I think if you don't want to do that, then there's Iron Man. Iron Man is very expensive though. He's 90 mini unique, so do think about that. He's also gamma radiation, so maybe you don't want to go with that because you will need it for those other characters. So maybe that's something that you don't want to do, but I do think that Iron Man is going to be used, of course, right, for your Tech Doom raids. So Iron Man does present himself as an option. I still think right now Omega Red is an incredibly good option as well. Yes, he is another mutant character, but as we've kind of gone through so far, there's not a lot of mutants that you're gonna use. We kind of didn't want to use some other mutant characters and some other nodes because we wanted to be able to save some gear just in case we needed to use Omega Red. So that's the reason why I'm still recommending Omega Red here. Maybe Shuri. I actually use Shuri for my Dark Dimension Legendary section, and I found her to be quite helpful. She was really helpful with the defense ups, helpful with ability energy, helpful with some timely heals here. So therefore, I would say too as well that Shuri is definitely a consideration as a character. So Morgan, LaFay, Rogue, Omega Red, Iron Man, and well, if you go with Shuri, then of course you're kind of taking up a little bit of your tech gear. So might need to process that a little bit. Maybe like I said, we wait for Red Hulk here. Otherwise, other than that, I mean, your options are very slim when it comes down to it. At the end of the day, you're probably just better off waiting for Red Hulk if you're kind of thinking about Dark Dimension, which most likely is going to be next patch anyways, right? So maybe good to go in that direction. So maybe we need to rethink Legendary a little bit, but we'll kind of come around to it as we process that a little bit further on. But listen, guys, appreciate you watching the video. Hopefully this was helpful for those who are kind of going to be planning towards Dark Dimension 5, maybe for Dark Dimension 4. The Legendary section probably needs a little bit more thought. I kind of missed and forgot that Iron Man and Shuri are both tech, right? So that does eat away a little bit at some of that gear. So may need to find a scapegoat as a fifth character if you don't want to wait. So we'll think about that as we kind of go for Black Bolt and maybe Invisible Woman. But maybe once again, that's bio gear that you might probably want to save for Red Hulk, right? But listen, appreciate you guys watching the video here. If it's your first time to the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you know when the videos do go live as well. Check out the links that are down below, right in the description. Link to Discord, link to my Twitch page, where I do stream Marve Strike Force content on a weekly basis, Tuesday, Thursdays, and then Tuesdays, Thursday nights, and then Friday mornings. I usually do stream Eastern Standard Time. Check that stuff out, guys. Appreciate you guys watching the video. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Y'all be safe. Bye.